Any kind of decent Chinese denim made in a decent way will last just as long as any good. In this end, a vintage Wrangler that cost only about $40 back when they were sold. And in this other hand, I have an Ironheart shirt, which retails for $310. I mean, I know I'm going to get a lot of people saying it won't last as long as this, made in Japan, but it's just not how materials work. I am currently wearing a vintage Wrangler made in USA shirt. As you can see, it is tucked in because it's an extra long tail. It's meant to be tucked. Is this worth $310 versus this Wrangler shirt, which retailed for probably more like $35 20 years ago? It's not currently sold, but today we're going to get into the types of materials that these shirts use and why Ironheart may be worth $300+ for a single shirt. Made in Japan, made in USA. Now let's get into the overall kind of look of these shirts first. With the Ironheart, you can see it's a striped shirt. I may call this a Wabash at times. It's not technically Wabash because of this striped pattern. Wabash is more dotted. But it's made in the same exact way in terms of the indigo being discharged from the material. So these white lines are actually, they used to be indigo, just like the indigo portions in between. The whole thing is dyed, and then they discharge it, and it leaves the white lines just like a Wabash would. This is the mechanic shirt from Ironheart. Serge material, it's a 2x2 material serge, which is not denim, but it is a predecessor to denim. And this is a 2x1 twill. 2x1 is going to be quite a bit lighter than a 3x1 denim, and that's what's usually used in shirting because it makes for a much more comfortable shirt when the denim is a lighter weave. And when it comes to 2x2 versus 2x1, the 2x2 is going to be a little bit stiffer than the 2x1 in denim, and it's more like a 7.25 ounce to maybe about 8 ounce material. It's a couple ounces lighter in weight per square yard. However, it's really good for summer, and as well, the cut. This is a cowboy cut. It's going to look right at home with cowboys and such with the pearl snaps there. This also has pearl snaps, but as you can see, they are black compared to the white pearl snaps on the Wrangler. And I would say that these snaps here on the Made in Japan Ironheart are a little bit more rugged. They're harder to snap and unsnap. They have a little bit more depth to them, as you can see there, compared to this here on the Wrangler vintage pearl snap. It snaps off way easier, but I actually don't think that's a downside. It might actually be an upside. Of course, the Wrangler has long sleeves, so it will have the pearl snaps, 3 there at the cuff and then the 1 there. If you want to roll up your sleeves, you can unsnap that one and roll that up. That's really versatile. Both have chest pockets. They're slightly larger on the Ironheart, but ample sized on the Wrangler. As well, there's the patch for the Wrangler. Looks quite old school. And there's a pen slot. As you can see, there's no stitching right there. Versus the Ironheart. Looks very nice, very nicely done, especially with these stripes being exactly patterned on the upper of the shirt, the pocket flap, and the body of the shirt. There's no pen slot for the Ironheart here. However, the label is flush with the top. They do use bar tacking at the edges of the pocket, as you can see right there. The Wrangler actually does do the same with bar tacking. That is bar tacking on the edge here. But it is only on the part where the pen slot is, the pencil slot there. Otherwise, it's not bar tacked on the edges. So that's a small detail that a lot of people might care about. You look at the yoke here, which is the shoulder. Of course, as I said, this is a Western cut, so it's Western styled. Versus the more plain shoulder on the Ironheart. We flip them over to the back and you can see again the Western yoke on the Wrangler versus just the straight back of the Ironheart. Since the Ironheart is not a long tail, this one is not meant to be tucked. Technically you can tuck this if you want, but it's not really made to be tucked. And as you can see right here, this is a bar tacked slit on the side. This is really nice because when you're using your pockets, you're reaching around your hip area, you're putting your hands up. This small slit on the sides actually helps a lot in terms of functionality and being able to move in your shirt. On the Wrangler, this is going to be super long. It is an extra long tail. It's meant to be tucked. And because of that, the bottom is not going to be finished quite as nicely. But I do think this is perfectly fine. I have zero issue with this. Even if I wanted to kind of untuck it, there's nothing wrong with this edge, in my opinion. Between a typical serge material like this 2x2 from Ironheart versus a 2x1 denim, what you're going to notice is that the 2x2 is going to be a little bit stiffer, as I mentioned already. However, if you get a denim shirt that's in a 3x1, the 3x1 will be stiffer than the 2x2. So 2x1 is going to be kind of the lightest and airiest, flowiest type of denim, whereas a serge is not necessarily denim, but it is a predecessor, and it's not so wrong to call it somewhat of a denim, and it will be slightly stiffer than a 2x1, but again, slightly less stiff than a 3x1. So if you were to get an Ironheart 21-ounce jacket or something in a 2x2 serge, it would feel immediately more velvety and comfortable than it would if it was a 21-ounce Ironheart in a 3x1 denim. The pocket flaps are attached basically the same as you can see there on the corner of the pocket, along with the Ironheart. The Ironheart uses this really nice gray thread, whereas Wrangler on this one are using basically the self-same type of color as the denim itself. I do like the contrasting stitching of the Ironheart and the details on this thing, but $310. After seeing those details, what do you think about the Wrangler shirt versus this Ironheart shirt? Is the Ironheart actually worth $310? In my opinion, I didn't pay $310 for this, right? I had a sponsorship that had nothing to do with Ironheart. It's a proxy service that I utilized as a sponsorship to get this shirt for quite a bit cheaper than $310 because I paid so little for this compared to the $310 full retail. I feel like psychologically in my mind, it has less of a hold on my mind in that sense because I paid a lot less money, right? I feel like I paid almost nothing because I did use that sponsorship, the credit from it, to purchase most of this, as well as some Whitesville tees. So in that sense, it was almost completely free for me. And I think removing that bias in terms of paying so much money for something actually enables you to look at something a little bit more clearly. Because I didn't pay that much, I'm actually looking at this in a way that is comparable to the Wrangler. I think it is comparable to the Wrangler. The small little details that I mentioned, like the bar tacking, the discharging of the indigo off this shirt to begin with, all those small details add up. That's why this thing costs so much money. But is it worth that money? And that question right there is a question for you. And leave some comments down below. I'm curious because I want to know how many people are actually buying these at full retail, or even, close to full retail, whatever it is, versus something like a Wrangler shirt that you can get for less than $40 that will last you probably just as long. I mean, I know I'm going to get a lot of people saying it won't last as long as this made in Japan, but it's just not how materials work. Honestly, a 2x1 denim is not going to last significantly less time than a 2x2 serge in this context, right? In the context of just working in them, using them in daily life. I truly don't think things like this, whatever the percentage is, whatever the maths is on that, like 6 times the price, it's not 6 times the durability, but is it 6 times the prestige? Is it 6 times maybe like in terms of the way you think of it mentally? Do you like it 6 times more? I think you can enjoy something like this way more than something that functions essentially the same way. But that's kind of the thing with prestigious Japanese items, and the point that I make with a lot of my YouTube shorts where I'm saying like Japanese selvage is not better than American denim or even Mexican denim, because it's not. Stop lying to yourself. You're buying the prestige, you're buying the heritage, you're buying the craftsmanship, you're buying the skill. You're not buying longevity necessarily. There is a little bit more longevity in it naturally, but you're not really buying that. Trust me when I say that any kind of decent Chinese denim made in a decent way will last just as long as any good, amazing quality Japanese denim. Prove me wrong. And one of the cool things about the Wrangler is that they have these stands inside the collar right here. You can't see them and you can't pull them out like you can with a dress shirt. You know how you have collar stands, they're plastic and you can put them in the collar so that the collar stands up nicely like this. There is actually collar stands in there, and that's a really nice thing. The Ironheart doesn't have that, doesn't really need it. It's 3 ounces heavier material, no, 2 ounces heavier material just about. So you don't really need it for something that's a heavier weight material. That's why dress shirts typically do have the collar stands, because the collars can get floppy on lighter weight materials. And I suppose I should probably clarify as well when I say that a like an 8 ounce versus a 10 ounce won't have much discernible difference in terms of durability and longevity. I still think that's true, but just for the sake of argument, let's just use the same ounce, right? Let's say that this is a 10 ounce material and the iron heart is also a 10 ounce material. Is the iron heart going to last longer because it's nicer in certain places, like certain spots are bar tacked, like around the pockets? Is that going to make the shirt overall last longer? No, it's not. I promise you it's not. Bar tacking's not going to make it last longer somehow. It's a nice detail. And I prefer it. I would love to see all those details, and that's what you're paying for. That's the whole point I'm trying to get at, is that you're buying prestige, you're buying just this beautiful, like the beautiful material that they make on vintage machines much of the time as well. You're buying a lot, in my opinion. You're not getting ripped off. A lot of people, for some reason, when I talk about the longevity of cheaper stuff lasting just as long as Japanese stuff, they get upset, and it's like, no, I bought this because I want it to last long. I'm sorry, baby boy. That just ain't gonna happen. It's gonna be the same thing as something much cheaper.